Okay, so most amateur rugby players make the same exact mistake when they start taking their training seriously. They get caught in the same trap over and over and over again, and it's understandable, but that trap is to train like professionals. I want to spend today explaining why I believe that is a mistake and give you a better solution so that you can become a proper rugby athlete and really play your best rugby at whatever level you are at. I'll show you the framework that I've developed and used with athletes from all over the world to get amazing results across the full spectrum of rugby strength and conditioning. And of course, if you are an ambitious amateur rugby player who wants a plan that fits your life but still ticks all of these boxes without the stress, check out Team Rugby Muscle or AAA one-on-one coaching. They'll be linked in the description below. So let me first start by saying that I don't blame anyone for making this mistake. It seems like a very logical step, not just because that's the theoretical end goal, like you want to improve at this sport, so you should look at those who are doing it the best. But also, that's where the most research, money, and effort always goes into. So it makes sense that this is where the most training information is what is available for you. The problem that you're going to encounter with this is that whilst the game, I don't even think you could argue the game is the same game, because if you see what the international and elite levels play, it's very different to what an amateur on a Saturday afternoon might look like. Even if it was the same game, the circumstances for those athletes versus for amateur athletes is going to be very different. So to get an understanding of what this really should look like, let me take you back a bit, right? So when I first started hitting the gym, I was a 17-year-old. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I did need to do something to improve my rugby. I didn't even really know how far I could push my rugby. I didn't really know what that would look like at all. I didn't realise that my county teammates were already in structured S&C programs at their private schools. I just got handed a basic program from my local club's first 15 coach and was told, okay, do this, you need to hit the gym, you need to be prepared for men's rugby. So I did. 3 or 4 days a week after school, and a few weeks later my shirts were already tighter around the arms, and I thought, yeah, this is cool, this is working, and I became hooked and I wanted more. So like every young athlete back then, I turned to the only training information that was really available, and that was the magazines, the bodybuilding nonsense, the occasional random blog website that got popular, and whatever fad the fitness world was pushing for that month. Every new issue, every new month brought a new secret, a new hack, a revolutionary method, and every time I thought that this was the missing piece that would turn me into a beast overnight. And shockingly, it never really did. But what it did do was set the stage for me to really revolutionize myself, not just as a player, but as a coach, and then push me to do the career that I do now. You see, before I really understood strength and conditioning for what it really is, I was falling for a problem that seems to be bigger than ever today, and that is information overload. We had this because they needed to fill, as I've already sort of hinted to, a monthly magazine each month, whether that was the bodybuilding ones or the fitness ones, or they needed new articles for their websites. Now we've got like 3 bloody reels every single day from every single content creator. Every hour of every day, there seems to be more content, right? New lifts, different lifts, new variations on lifts, new ways that you can do lifts, new ways to hit different muscles, new programs, new science, new influencer tips, new pro rugby highlight training sessions, new review of someone else's training. Just a lot, like so much noise. And now there is good information within that, but contextualizing all of it is basically impossible. No one can do it. Not even the most smartest S&C expert that there is. There's just not enough time to contextualize all of that information that's being thrown at you. Your brain simply cannot process that much and turn it into a practical system. And that's why so many amateur players spend years training hard, putting in the time, putting in the effort, but never really seeing themselves move forward and have better performances continually on the pitch. It's a system problem, right? Because most S&C is focused on those in a high performance academy with physios, S&Cs on tap, daily training, and an abundance of recovery. Your situation is probably more like head into a local gym, whichever is the most convenient for you to train at, whichever may be closest to work, closest to school, closest to your home, or sort of a blend of the two that has enough equipment, or maybe even the cheapest. You're training rugby twice a week in the evening. You're fitting in sessions between school, work, family, and everything else. And that doesn't inherently make you a worse athlete. It just means that your approach has to be different than those in that first situation. So the biggest mistake is copying the pros, not because the pros are wrong, but because their training is built around their reality with full recovery, full support, full time, zero responsibilities outside of the sport, not even considering their genetics, their current abilities, etc. Whereas you might have 45 minutes after work and a toddler that wakes you up at 3 a.m. Maybe you've got to train around school homework or in a funky leisure centre using a car park for sprints. Trying to copy pro training is only going to lead to one of two things: burnout or overwhelm and confusion. So here's the truth. You don't need to find more hours to dedicate to the gym. You probably have enough. What you need is clarity around what you're doing when you go. You don't need the perfect week. You need repeatable, constructive weeks heading you towards how you want to play as a player. All right. So imagine you're trying to build the most impressive structure possible. I'll forgo the building a base analogy when we're talking about building a massive pyramid, and just look at time. It doesn't matter how much you get done when you're building a huge structure in a day or in a week or even in a month. It's about continually stacking quality bricks in a way that will build the structure that you want. And that's the approach that you need to have with your S&C. The players who actually improve year after year after year, it's absolutely possible because I've seen it over and over again, but they're not the ones doing the most volume. They're not the ones continually in every single week putting the most amount of work in. They're the ones with simple, consistent systems built around the 5 elements of their rugby strength and conditioning. That's strength, aerobic conditioning, power, speed, and mobility. Not training with perfection, but training with direction. When you stop trying to sort of out-train your circumstances and start working with them, that's when you're going to find, after a certain amount of weeks, and you see the weights progress, you see your conditioning improve, you see your performance get much better, that is when everything clicks. This is the first principles approach. This is the lens that really changed everything for me. I heard about the first principles approach and realized that's what I'd been doing after I jumped from fad to fad anyway, and I started seeing it everywhere. I started seeing it with GB Cycling, Norwegian Endurance, SpaceX, Tesla, and countless other sort of revolutionary performance systems that had used this approach to break boundaries and achieve things that had never been achieved before, like amazing results. And that is what we're trying to do with Rugby Muscle with amateur rugby players. First principles basically just means stripping everything away and asking, what exactly are we trying to achieve, and what do we know for sure can help us to achieve that? Right, so in a rugby context, we're looking at what does rugby actually demand and how do we know that we can improve at those things. When you start from there, most of the industry's noise starts to disappear. Bodybuilding culture becomes irrelevant, right? And muscle just grows as needed to match the performance demands that you want on the pitch. Functional training gimmicks become irrelevant because functional training just basically means that you're trying to improve at your certain function. In this case, it's going to be rugby. So all of your training, if you're improving at rugby, is functional, whether that's bicep curls, whether that's a power clean. Optimal nonsense, again, becomes irrelevant. Similar to functional, optimal should be dealing with you as an individual, as an athlete in your situation. Optimal, like functional, is relative to you and your situation. So once we've rid ourselves of all of this nonsense and all of this noise, all we're left with, really, is what does rugby truly demand of you? Well, you need to run hard and run often. You need to accelerate fast and reach top end speeds. You need to be able to change direction quite quickly, as fast as possible, to off-balance your opponent and to be able to catch your opponent. You need to be able to take hits. You need to be able to give hits yourself. You need to be able to win collisions in whichever way you choose possible. And you need to be able to repeat those efforts over and over and over again. Not during a 10-minute period, but over the course of an 80-minute game. And then also over the course of a week, over the course of a season, over the course of several seasons, because that's when you start to add them together and continually improve and absolutely revolutionize yourself as a player. So it's not just about lasting a game, it's about lasting seasons, staying as injury free, staying as burnout free, and continually progressing as much and continually and consistently as possible. And once you look at training this way, everything does become clearer. You stop chasing shiny new programs that promise to make amazing progress within 2 weeks, and you start training for the sport and for your situation within that sport itself. This is the performance model. You start with the sport, you work backwards, and you build into what you know is missing and how you can bridge that gap. And that's the foundation of what Rugby Muscle and all of the training, everything that we do here, even all of the content that I try to put out, is all about. If you want a system built in this way around performance, simplicity, and amateur rugby, check out the ways that you can work with me, or even the free Rugby Athlete Blueprint that will be linked in the description below. And yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope this episode helped you rethink how you approach your training as an ambitious amateur rugby player. I know I've been missing for a bit. I probably sound a bit coldy. I am now in England, and I've had taken a lot of time to adjust, but I wanted to come back with something that would really make you think about your training and hopefully make a big difference into how you approach your S&C, how you approach the rugby, maybe even how you approach your life. If you did find it useful, please do give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them in the comments below, or hit the 3 dots on Spotify. Share this episode with a teammate. And if you are not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.